Okay, how do we test a form? We've talked about unit tests, and those are great for functions. You give me an input, I have a desired output. Making a unit test for a whole web page is a little bit more problematic. First of all, the desired output is like an entire huge web page, and I'm like, if I want to go and tweak something later, it wouldn't sort of negate my test cases, or wouldn't something be considered wrong if I sort of change my, changing the specs, but in a very small way. It's like, I said this was the desired output, but I want this text here to be in a slightly different font or something like that, and suddenly, boom, you say, hey, you don't pass the test case. So we don't really want unit tests for web pages in that same way, or at least the unit tests would be different. That'd be more along the lines of, hey, I want correctness, the correct output of this form should be something that mentions the total price over here, and it mentions some of the things that were filled out in the form over there, and it includes the word such and such at a certain place, and it has to have a certain image, but who cares about exactly where that image is on the page? Yeah, the software testing class, good class, they talk about things like that a little bit, and they talk about XPath as a way to sort of abstract away from the details of exactly what needs to be in a desired output. I'm going to back off even from that. I'm going to say, I don't really need unit tests for my entire web pages. I'll have those for individual functions I write. I'll try to keep my functions small, returning a value, be able to have a unit tests on them. But when I have a form and submit it, yeah, there's going to be some result there. I don't mind looking at that sort of by hand. But now here's what happens in real life. I go and I'm working on the homework. I have all, a form with 7 different inputs, and I click submit, and I see the output. And I'm like, oh, okay. Oh, I want to go change one item here. I want to put that into italics. And I go and change my form handler to put something else in italics. And now I want to say, oh, did my change really work? So I go back to my form, reload it, type in all those things again, hit submit again, and that just takes a lot of effort, and I'm lazy. Lazy. I don't want to do all that work. I don't want to keep typing information into a form to hit submit and see what happens. And then, there's other things too. I want to make sure that I'm sanitizing my input, right? So I want to make sure, what if they provide me a name that contains an angle bracket inside of it? Gosh, I need to go and test that, and I need to check for 7 other weird inputs. What if they leave this input off that was required? Oh gosh, what should happen there? So this next little bit is kind of cool. It's a very simple idea for a way to test web pages without having to test forms, without having to type everything into the form. It's really testing the form handler. And it's a pretty simple idea if you've understood what's going on before. And I'll throw in one more bit. I don't really see this in books written down. It's a straightforward idea, but this is pure bonus you won't find in other courses or books necessarily. Okay, and let me just skip to the punchline. I have some sort of form. I have a longer form example, and I'm going to go and say, hey, here's what I'm going to do. And what I'm going to do is the same thing that the web server usually does. Okay, usually a user types in things on a form, hits submit, a request goes to a web server, and that request includes a bunch of key value pairs. What does the web server do? Takes those key value pairs, puts them into an array called post, and then runs my form handler, my PHP form handler, okay? Well, I'm just going to do that last little bit. I'm going to have a PHP program that makes an array called post, fills it with key value pairs, and then calls my form handler. Oh, and now the nice thing about this, I can run this program. Yeah, that program right up there. Yeah, that one. I can run that program, and I can run that locally on my machine. There's no web going on here. It's just calling my form handler, but it's providing that form handler with an array post full of all the information that somebody could have filled out on a form. So now I can, A, test my function without going through the web at all. That's pretty awesome. B, if I put this file out on the web, this is a PHP program, so if I request this file via a web server, it will just run this file. There's no form involved, but even over the web, I'll be able to see the results back in my browser of the resulting page, and I didn't have to type anything in on the form to be able to get that. So that's pretty handy. And I think I've now said everything you need to know, but let me just say it again. All I'm going to do is make an array called post and populate it with key value pairs and then run my form handler. Because that's all the server did. That's all Apache did. Said, hey, somebody filled out, if I get a request for a form handler and included a bunch of key value pairs, I'm going to make array post, I'm going to fill it up with the key value pairs and run that form handler. So we're getting that exact same behavior going on there. Okay, so I guess the one little wrinkle I'll throw in is about get magic quotes. Sometimes the server goes and the things put into post are modified as they're put into post according to the server's magic quotes setting. So that's the one thing that may not match up exactly between running it through a server and running this form directly, okay? Or running it through submitting a form versus running this directly. Okay, so let's just go see what happens here. So I'm going to have, in fact, I'm going to have several different tests of my form. This one was just a routine test. This was so I had a first name field that I maybe left blank. There was a checkbox 1 that got checked. There was a checkbox 2 that got checked. These were the key value pairs that came out of that form. Since I wrote the form, I know what stuff might end up in a post array. Okay. I even had some checkboxes that created an entire subarray of results. Okay. There was a radio button that got selected as well. When I go and run that, here are the results of process. I haven't even shown you the form. Here are the results of processing the form. Hello, and then it actually used first name, which was a string of length 0. Okay, so fair enough. Then it went ahead, what did the form handler do? It printed out everything received by the script, and then it had some stuff about processing the input and some different things. And I might notice, hey, I'm getting an undefined index error. This is because I have my error handling turned on. And now I realize, oh, maybe I should be taking care of that. Yeah, and even got an exact line number here. This was looking up something in the post array that wasn't there. My form handler was looking it up, and it wasn't necessarily in my form. Okay. Yeah, okay. So, okay, that's pretty cool. I'll even go and show you the entire form. This form had, my first name, and I can do some of these things here. Yeah, I'll have to update that link. Sorry, my bad. But anyway, if you look at this page here, this had things like CB1 is one of the checkboxes with a certain value A and a text input with the name attribute FN. And that's why I went ahead and made my array handler check certain things. Hey, CB1 was checked with a certain value. FN had the empty string there. Maybe I want to test that and sort of see what happens if the empty string was stored in there. I can have more files that look just the same. Here's I call this, so if I had form B and form B handle, this one I'll call form B handle test. It's testing form B handle, okay? And I'm gonna have several of these tests, 0, 1, 2, 3. So test 1 had some stuff. Test 2 has some additional information. By the way, there's no reason that I need to go ahead and assign to the array sequentially. It's like, hey, put this into the array post, assign this into post, assign this into post. I could just, hey, here, I'll call the array constructor with all these key value pairs. Hey, take this array and put it into my variable called underscore post. Either syntax, I don't really care about how you do that. Just make an array, make post be filled with certain key value pairs, and then just require your form, or require once your form. Require or require once? My form handler, I guess, isn't just defining things. If somehow I say, hey, run the form handler, and then later I say run the form handler again, that's running it twice, the second time might do something different. So I really want to do require, not just require once. Require once would say, oh, I've already required this previously, don't do it again. That's fine if you're just defining functions, like your utils.php is just defining a bunch of functions. Hey, I've already defined those functions. Defining them again won't do anything different than before. But if you have stuff that actually executes, does something, prints, has any side effect, printing is a side effect, then you want to use require rather than require once. Okay, so yeah, I have test 1 and test 2. Here's the results of test 2 that actually included a name that was howdy. I'm like, oh, okay, I can go ahead and actually get this here. And I can see things and still see, oh, I'm still accessing things there, indices that didn't exist. So yeah, that means somebody could be not selecting things on the form, submitting it, and I'd get these errors, so I've been able to check that. In fact, here's a very simple test. What arrays do we like testing, even though we're not doing unit tests? Am I thinking about, hey, think about degenerate inputs, an array of size 0, an array of size 1, an array of size many, even for forms. Yeah, what is an array of size 0? Well, maybe that's somebody going to the form and submitting it without filling in anything at all. Okay. That's not quite the case because text inputs, if the user doesn't fill anything in, the text input is still there. It just has the empty string filled inside of it. So the array is not entirely empty. It contains empty strings, which is okay. But yeah, what happens if my form handler were to get an entirely empty input? Yeah, I start getting all sorts of things here. And so I can go fix this error here about line 18 access. And then when I want to check that I've gotten rid of it, I can just go and click on that link again. Or if I'm having troubles running it over the web, I'm not sure what's going on through the web server, I can run this thing locally on my machine. I can just say, hey, I walk up to this form handle test.php and run it. Okay. I would suggest when you have a form, test your handler by giving it an empty array. Give it an array with some of the values filled in, maybe an array with all the values filled in reasonably, and then have a version where you are also passing in things that are maybe a little bit tricky, inputs that you need to be handled carefully. What are inputs we need to handle carefully? Any inputs that had these HTML sanitizing unsanitary characters in them, like less than. So yeah, here's a first name that contains angle bracket B as part of the name, okay? We can look at that. I can actually run this one and say, oh, look at that, my form is not actually sanitizing, and I've caught this error. I can add this, I can go fix my page, come back, and it's real easy to check that I don't need to go to the form and retype everything. That's what's cool. Now, here's the last little bit, and this is another key point here. My form handler is going to be given an array of key value pairs. Those key value pairs, when you request the form handler, somebody is just requesting that URL, okay? It does not mean the person requesting this URL has just barely finished filling out the form. That's usually my mind. That's how I expect my form handler to get used. Somebody filled out the form and then clicked submit, and that caused form handler to get requested. But somebody can go to their web browser and just type in the form handler URL and go straight there. In fact, they can craft an HTTP request, maybe not using a web browser, but some other program that says, hey, make an HTTP request, go to this form handler URL, and here are the key values that should be part of that request. And they can send to my form handler key value pairs that did not occur anywhere in my form. And I think I've even mentioned they could, and something else they could do, even if they don't want to use a separate program to somehow craft inputs, they could go to my form, save that, do a view source, save that HTML to disk, and then take that text file, that saved HTML on their disk. They can run in there and they can add new inputs that didn't exist in my original form. They can take out any JavaScript checking I had. They can do all sorts of stuff. Save that revised version to their disk. It's still a form, and it still submits to my form handler. They can open that file from their browser, hit submit, and now my form handler is going to be given, there might be key value pairs for keys that weren't the name of any input in my file. So if you look at this test 3, including FN, first name being Booyah, there was some value. So yes, somebody could go ahead and submit to my form and give it an array that contained the key value pair where this key was not sitting anywhere in my form, but my form still gets it. Now, my form's probably not going to do much with that because my form just sort of looks for, hey, look up underscore post of FN, look up underscore post of family. But there might be pull down menus where it has the name of the pull down menu, but the value associated with that was not anything that was in my pull down menu, but my form handler will still be given that. Yeah, so, and actually, back in the case where my form handler was given a key that didn't exist in my form, yeah, maybe my form handler loops through everything in post and expects everything that was in post to have come from the form. Bad assumption. Admittedly, if somebody does this, that's going to be an attacker. This is not an innocent mistake. This is not my cousin who is using my form and just forgets to fill something out before they hit submit. This is a more malicious attack going on. This is somebody trying to submit a wacky form. I still need to be able to handle that. So how do we handle it? Well, we need to handle it however we handle it. The point of this lesson is, hey, make these little tiny PHP programs that just initialize an array post and then require my form handler. They don't go over the web. You can run it over I can run this little program over the web still if I want, but I can also go ahead and run it locally online, not through the web. And every time I update my form handler, I don't need to test it closely by typing things into the form. I can just click on these 4 links. These actually results links here. By the way, if you look at the, if you get out your magnifying glass and zoom into the video here and look at the address bar, this little results link is the one that actually goes to my PHP file, okay? Again, if I just click on that, I actually see I'm making a request to the server says it's a PHP program and it runs it. So I can't really do a show source easily on this thing here, which is why I included, this is just for the lecture purposes, I renamed the file, form handle test1.php. I renamed it to form handle test1 underscore php dot text. And that's why when I click on it as a .text file, we actually see it. You won't actually click on this file and see that source unless you do some weird renaming like I just did. You will click on, if you run this over the web, you will click on the link and you'll see the results of running it. We know how that works. That's the same old, same old. Okay. Test your form handlers by making a little PHP program that initializes post and requires your form handler. That's all there is to it. Thank you.